Social media. What platform, how much, and how often? Having a social media presence is critical. How do you manage a social media strategy amongst everything else you're trying to do? When I've set up the today-years-old YouTube channel, it's the thing I've struggled with most. And that's been okay because I can use my network and grow it organically. But with a business, it's different. This time, I need to get it right. And so, this is another day in London, and I've come extra early for a nice walk around Regent's Park. There's more choice of social media platforms than there ever have been before. So how do you know to pick the right one? And what's the right frequency to grow a following but not spam them? And how do you put out interesting stuff and get the balance between using it as a marketing tool and giving free advice? Well, social media strategy is really pivotal for any business, and that's why I've been doing lots of research on it. I'm going to share my tips with you. I've been reading a book called The Overnight Success, and I'll put a link in the description down below because it's a very handy, practical guide to getting your social media strategy right. See, your social media strategy isn't just about pushing out your product, what is your product, all the benefits, etc. It's more than that. It's a way of gathering a loyal following. And to do that, you need to put out interesting content. What is interesting content? It could be things like advice. I use book reviews. I think they're quite a good lever because most people want to read, they want to read more, but they are time poor. So putting out a book review is a really good way of giving people the highlights, and if they are interested and they want to read it, then they can, and if they're not and they just wanted the summary, well, you've given that to them. The same is true of podcasts. I want to start getting into reviewing the podcasts, and I guess not reviewing them, but more just sharing the kind of key learnings from them. And taking kind of bigger content, distilling it down into useful bite-sized bits is a handy thing to do on social media. And that, something like Twitter lends itself really well to that. But what about Instagram? I love using Instagram personally. It's the home of all my bike photos. But professionally, I struggle. I mean, how do I encapsulate fintech through a series of photos that isn't just like blue background, lines, charts, graphs, things like that, that frankly no one's that interested in? So should I just bin Instagram altogether? At the moment, my strategy is less is more. I am really struggling to find the time to post on social media and to kind of get the engagement, but I also know it's really important. So instead of trying to do a little bit of everything, I'm going to focus just on Twitter. Now, one of the things Mary says in The Overnight Success is about twice a day is the right time to post. Generally in the morning when people are scrolling through, maybe with their morning coffee, and then again either at lunchtime or in the evening. But don't try and spam them 3 times a day. And social media, particularly Twitter, is as much about interacting with people as it is pushing out your own posts. Having read The Overnight Success, the key message is this: there's no such thing. Overnight success, or perceived overnight success, comes from the fact that you laid down the foundations and the infrastructure so that when that first bit of success came, you could quickly capitalise it and grow on it. And you know what the secret to that is? Social media. So I'm making concerted effort to put this at the forefront of my day. There are various systems you can use to automate your social media. Hootsuite was one that I used when I was working at a startup called Stack Overflow a few years ago. But when you're starting out, should you automate your social media? My gut feeling is no, not yet. I mean, the purpose of social media at this stage is to grow your following and to grow your connections to help you ultimately sell your product. The hard part is then trying to convert that following into potential sales leads. But as such an early stage startup, my strategy at the moment is just to gather any following, and ideally a loyal one. Having lots of followers is fine, but they need to be loyal ones that interact with your content, meaningful connections, which is really what social media is about. Once that is done, we'll worry about selling them something later. We've talked a lot of theory, but what about the practice? Here's my Twitter page. Ignore the fact that there's not many followers right now. My view is everyone started somewhere. Even Elon Musk only had 1 follower at some stage, right? So I'm not so bothered by the numbers themselves. Instead, I'm focusing on pushing out quality content that people of the demographic that I'm targeting for my startup would be interested in, and I'm taking the view that it will grow organically by itself. So what type of content am I pushing out? What's successful and what's not so successful? Well, looking at my most recent tweet, this is pushing out my recent episode 3 Entrepreneur Diaries YouTube video, and as you can see, it's not the best. So Twitter gives you this handy view on the activity. So 23 people saw this, and there was one retweet, which was me, because I'm a saddo. So as you can see, when you've got such a small following, just pushing out content into the abyss isn't really the best way to get the most engagement. Another type of content is when you quote a tweet. So every day I look through for interesting articles about fintech that I can engage with in some way, whether that's just straight retweeting or, in this case, quoting the tweet. Honestly, now that I look back, this feels like it probably wasn't the most insightful thing I've said about this, and I will take a lesson to be more interesting in the future. And this is really reflected in the numbers. If you look here, a measly 27 people saw it, and quite rightly, they have completely ignored it because it's a very boring tweet I've put. But really, what makes the most engagement is when you attend an event and you tweet during it. So recently I attended Innovation Finance's Pitch 360 Awards, and I tweeted a little bit during that. So this company, Clause Match, were the winning company, and so I just let them know congratulations for winning. And you can see that this was much more successful. There are a total of 1,200 impressions on this tweet, and 11 people have engaged with it in some way. And as if you needed more convincing, I've let them know that I'm going to attend and that I'm excited. How did that one do? Well, here you can see 907 with 13 engagements. So this type of tweet really speaks for itself. Sometimes you get an engagement that feels like it could be the start of a lucky break. This one, with my Unmind tweet, is quite a good example. So I came across this company, Unmind, and they'd had a bit of good news, and I just tweeted about it, and it got picked up by a Tech EU and somebody who worked there, and then they retweeted this, and this helped it to get some more views. This one has had 2,443 impressions with 18 engagements, and sometimes you just need those lucky breaks to help you. So what do we take from this? Well, really, there's no one size fits all. It's important that you put different types of content, all of which are relevant to your target demographic. Use these impressions, these analytics, to help you understand what does well versus what doesn't do so well. But don't just be driven by them. Focus primarily on what is interesting, because the objective of social media ultimately is to create meaningful connections. And if you're doing that, you're doing it right. I hope this has been interesting and you've learned something and you can still hear me above all the cafe noise. If you have, please don't forget to give this a like, comment with any social media tips you've got, and of course subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content like this. See you in the next one.